Also, you're going to be talking with the participant about quite conscientious topics and topics that can be quite personal to them, so you have to take this into consideration as well. Also, you have to guarantee the protection of information on the grounds of keeping the participant anonymous and also compliance with data protection laws such as the Data Protection Act that was introduced in 1984. So, one method of qualitative research is an interview, and interviews are probably one of the most common techniques for qualitative data. And this is where a researcher will ask a participant a number of questions in order to collect information that's wanted by them. So, in order for this to be truthful and for it to be reliable and valid, there needs to be some form of trust between the interviewer and the client. So the advantages and disadvantages of these are pretty obvious. You can ask for what you want to know. There are a range of structures you can follow. The data collected is very rich and very strong. The interviews can be easily accessed by a large number of people. There's no miscommunication between the interviewer and the interviewee, because you can clarify what you're asking if there is some misunderstanding. And in interviews, you can ask the exact questions you want to ask to receive the data you require. Disadvantages wise, the quality of the responses will vary dependent on the questions. So you have to know what you want to ask and you have to word it well if you want to get what you want to know. Also, as bad as it may seem, people may lie in interviews in order to seem more socially desirable. They may lie about themselves in order to try and sell themselves, basically. Results may not be accurate or reliable because of this. And interviewees may misinterpret a question and answer incorrectly, and thus invalidating the data you collect. And potential ethical issues raised by this are privacy and consent. Interviewees may feel like because it's face-to-face, they are not being kept anonymous. Protection, because obviously you're probing for answers from them. They may have sore topics they prefer not to talk about, and you won't know about this. And debriefing and support, again, as you may be talking about conscientious topics. One variant of interviews are unstructured interviews, and unstructured interviews are essentially interviews where the questions are not set and new questions are brought up, developed, and asked throughout. So this can be due to a person's reaction to particular questions, and therefore, in order to get a more in-depth answer, the interviewer would ask for further details on their answers. So advantages and disadvantages of these are that unstructured interviews are more flexible. They can be adapted and changed during. They generate qualitative data through the use of open questions. They allow open and depthful conversations, and they also allow participants to bring their own opinions into the answers more. This increases the validity, and it allows the interviewee to kind of take control of the interview and steer the direction of the interview, allowing the data collected to be richer and more varied. However, that point does come with a disadvantage that they may move off topic. And also the interview will be more time consuming because the interviewee is allowed to basically roam with their answers and speak however they wish. Structured interviews are the complete opposite. The interviewer has set questions to ask. The questions can be slightly altered depending on the responses, but generally they're set to a structure, and that structure is followed most of the time. Whereas unstructured interviews, you can change the questions on the fly. Structured interviews, you will ask the questions and then potentially you'll maybe ask a further one for clarification on the point, but generally you keep things the same. They're easy to replicate because you're asking the same questions all the time. They're closed questions. They're easy to quantify. They can take place over a short amount of time, since the closed questions will be essentially yes/no answers. There will be next to no clarification on them, but you can ask for a clarification afterwards. Disadvantages, they lack in flexibility because new questions cannot be asked during the interview, and the answers can lack detail since they will be asked closed questions. Semi-structured interviews are basically somewhere in between. So semi-structured interviews are interviews that include a fixed open set of questions, and the questions are there to prompt the questioner to ask further questions upon the answers and search for more information and gain further responses. So advantages of these are there's a large amount of flexibility which will allow more genuine and diverse answers from the participants.